Ladies and gentlemen, the long wait is over. We are finally responsible adults, and we are showing up at 8:07 Eastern Time on Friday, which is not our usual night, but for the last 2 weeks, it has been it's just been a fill-in day for us. It's been a pretty crazy couple of weeks. But how's life treating you?
Oh, not bad. Finally, the weekend's finally here, so things can somewhat settle down. Not really, because I have 5 children. So,
yep. I was going to say, you got 5 kids. There's no such thing as a calm day.
Yeah.
You can
I
have
don't have to go to work. I get a break from work. How about that?
So, there you go. That's better. I mean, it's only half the chaos at that point, so that's not too bad.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's always crazy in my household between these 3 barking morons behind me and screaming 2-year-olds and fiancés chasing them around. Which they are not home this evening, so actually they will not be making any random appearances in the background. The dogs.
I thought you were going to say fiancés yelling at you.
I mean, that's a given. The word fiance automatically assumes like that.
That's how we know the opposite person loves us and is attracted to us, by the way they yell at us and tell us to do things.
You know what though? I learned a long time ago. It's better to be yelled at than to have nothing said at all, because it's
exactly.
It sucks being yelled at, obviously, but at least it's okay, they still care about us enough to want an effort from us, so that's good. So anyway, Rich Smoke shouldn't be single by the end of this episode. We'll find out next week when we're back on Thursday or Friday at 8 p.m. I'm just kidding.
You're going to be doing a show in a van down by the river.
I'll just have the ring off. That's all. The ring won't be on next week. If the ring's gone, something happened. No, but I mean, anyway. So obviously, it's been a lot of stuff has happened since the last time that we've gone live. It's been a bit, and it's been a pretty chaotic week. Real life and football and everything. It's been pretty crazy. So we're going to hit on some of that today, of course, like always. And, I think one of the first things that we'll hit on is probably the most talked about thing. But before we even do that, has there been anything for your team this week? Because we're trying to get better with not talking about our teams too much. So what I figured we'll do is we'll open the show and we'll make a quick little comment. Is there anything that your team has done this week that you're happy about or just irrelevant?
See, I was prepared to go through this show without either bringing up.
It wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. You were eventually going to accidentally cave. So I figured what we'll do is we'll get it out early. So just a quick hit on it. Obviously, there's been some current stuff for you guys, Kes Watkins, and picking up some other guys. But anybody,
Watkins, that all the Steelers fans thinks is going to be the next Antonio Brown, and then
he has 1,296 yards in 4 seasons. It's great. It's wonderful numbers. He was only beat, if you were to compare his career numbers to 8 receivers last year, he's 9th. So is there anything that's happened that you're either disappointed about or excited about or happy about as far as from a?
I mean, they brought in Cardale Patterson right after, pretty much. I mean, it wasn't maybe a couple hours after the new kickoff rule came into effect.
Don't talk about that yet.
I'm not crazy about it because to me, he's old. He's getting older now. He's kind of like a fill-in player at this point.
Well, it's what, 6-7 million a year?
$6 million for 2 years. Yeah. And he's got more of a running back body now. He's not that wide receiver guy anymore. So, and that's what Pittsburgh needs right now. They need somebody on the other side of Antonio Brown. I mean, you're signing Cardale to a 6-year contract to be the 3rd string running back and maybe
occasional slot receiver.
Occasional, but he's 240 pounds.
But the other problem I have with that is you've done nothing but sign slot receivers over the last year. Like Kes Watkins, slot receiver. Cardale Patterson, slot receiver. You already got Calvin Austin III, slot receiver. Van Jefferson, slot receiver. How many? That's why we were laughing the other night when we talked. How many guys can you put in the slot? There's going to be a straight line. Right next to the
everybody
tight end,
meet in the middle.
Guys. There's gonna be 4 guys in a line right next to the tight end on the right hand side. Everybody just run straight and just do random zigzags, and we'll throw the ball to one of you. It's a lot. And then
I saw about 10 minutes or so that the Steelers have a pre-draft visit with Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback from Washington, which I'm not exactly crazy about. Me and you both like Bo Nix in this draft. I was kind of hoping that that's what it was going to say.
I think I've talked about him too much.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not crazy about Michael Penix. I get Tua vibes from him. I think he might have a little bit better arm, but
he's definitely better throwing the ball.
I feel like his game style doesn't translate well for any NFL team. He has to go in a certain system to thrive in the NFL.
Well, and as far as like anything like Eagles related too, it's like, obviously the biggest news recently is Hassan Reddick getting traded to the New York Jets today for a third round pick, conditional, could be a second round pick depending on snaps, and I'm sure there's some stats behind there, so many sacks or whatever. So I thought it was a pretty good trade overall. We picked up Bryce Huff from the Jets. And it's funny, Joe Douglas is the president over to the GM, and he was actually the Eagles GM when I was growing up. So there's a lot of relationship between Philadelphia and Joe Douglas. So the Jets and us have definitely made some moves over the years with Flacco and things like that. But I mean, for me, I'm happy for him. I mean, he's been an absolute cornerstone of the Eagles defense for the last couple of seasons. It's hard to watch highlight film without seeing him pop on there at least 2-3 times.
What do you think made him expendable? Nolan Jones? I mean,
no, it was the price. Because I mean, he's playing on his final year. The problem is he wants to get paid. Like he deserves to
Nolan
get paid.
Smith. Is it Smith?
It's Nolan Smith. Yeah, it's Nolan Smith.
Yeah,
Out of Georgia. Yeah. But no, we just picked up Bryce Huff, and he's an edge rusher off the Jets for $57 million. So you can't have two guys playing the same spot at the same time for $25 million a year between the two of them. It's just way too much money for an edge rusher. I mean, and again, like, I mean, at the end of the day, like he's amazing at what he does. I think the Jets defense will fit what he does perfectly. So I'm excited for him. I mean, obviously it sucks to lose him, and we lost our Hall of Fame wide receiver in Kes Watkins. He went to you guys. He was always the guy the Eagles fans were like, all right, this is the year. And I'm not gonna lie, he has a lot of really cool things about him that get you excited, and then it just never happens, which kind of sucks. Because I've been rooting for that guy for years since we got him.
Well, and I kind of thought they were bringing him in for the kick return or a punt returner, just for the speed aspect.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good slot guy. You're just not going to get a lot out of him. That's the problem. It's like, where like speed's important, which he has. Like he can catch the ball for the most part, a couple drops here and there, nothing too crazy. But the problem is, for a speedy guy to be small like he is, you got to be a good route runner. And I've watched tape on him multiple times on other podcasts that are Eagles related, and his footwork isn't there. His route running is not where it should be. And he's still young, so like who knows? But 4 years tells me a lot about you. If it takes 4 years to finally have a year, that tells me that you're just taking way too long to progress.
You should have at least developed some sort of niche.
I think his best season is like 500 receiving yards or whatever from like 2-3 years ago. So, I mean, good luck. I wish you guys all the best with him. And I always I'm a little bit different than Bubba, so shout out to Triple B Experience, by the way, and the new Steelers Dynasty podcast. But, like he was talking about, if somebody leaves the Steelers, they're dead to me kind of thing. I actually feel differently. I like to see some of these guys who we don't use a lot of, like backups and stuff like that. I love seeing them go elsewhere and like carve. Like some people get so mad. Oh my God, we should have kept him. Look what he's doing now. But he obviously didn't fit your system or whatever it was. But like I'm always rooting for those guys. So I hope Reddick goes out and has 100 sacks next year, as long as he's not playing the Eagles when he does it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, nothing too crazy from the Philadelphia perspective. The one funny thing, I wish I would have made a graphic for it, like I was going to. I don't know if anybody saw this. Saquon Barkley, little by little, trying to talk Jason Kelce into coming back. Because Jason Kelce made a tweet and he said something like, "This is going to be a really exciting offense to watch. It's really going to be hard to watch. It's going to be hard to have to watch it." And Saquon said, "Who said you have to watch?" And he put a couple eyeball emojis on there. So it's been pretty funny trying to watch like a lot of Eagles have been doing it to him. A lot of Eagles keep atting Jason Kelce whenever it comes to like.
The thing is, he has so many options now. Like, it's okay that he's staying away from football. Like, he has way more endeavors now.
I wouldn't be surprised though. I wouldn't be surprised though if somebody were to get hurt, knock on wood, like a Cam Jurgens or whatever, and we're really weak at center, and let's say we're 4 or 5 weeks in, it would not surprise me to hear that Jason Kelce was going to accept a contract for the rest of the year. Wouldn't surprise me.
That'd be something else.
It'd be very, very tempting for him, and I think he would have a really hard time saying no because he wants to win, and we do have a team that could win. Ryan Nelka, it wasn't oh, yeah, that's right. It was on the Kelce Brother podcast. You're right. I just keep seeing stuff on Twitter, and I can never tell what's a tweet and what's actually like a whatever. I don't ever read the source. Fan to fan. What's up, Shane? That is Shane Statmiller. You've seen him on the show before. He has his own show on YouTube talking about college football. And that is Fan to Fan. So make sure you guys check him out. And Ryan Nelka said I know he said he's not coming back. I don't expect Jason Kelce.
Did you just call him Ryan Knuckle?
I messed his name up for a second.
Sorry, Ryan.
I just messed that up. I've known Ryan for a while. He knows better. And I swear to God, I'm not drinking alcohol. This is actually coffee in my mug over here. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, so yeah, that's a little bit about our teams right now. Obviously, want to hit on a couple of things. I know Freight Train says he was going to go the whole show without mentioning the Steelers, but I do know how hard
I was
that
prepared
would be.
to.
Yeah, but I didn't want you to have to like clench your cheeks up the whole show and like, oh, don't say it. I'm like, just let him get it out.
I did just spill the beans out in the last like 2 minutes of the show. Like, oh, by the way, Steelers, la, 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 just run on a rant. But
what you appreciate it. Yeah, I hope he is. He better be. I mean, that's an understatement. For the money we're giving him, he better be ready to work. But yeah, so the first thing we're going to hit on, guys, and by all means, I would love to hear you guys in the comment section giving me your feedback on this topic. I know everybody's been talking about it for the last couple of days, but there's been some NFL rule changes over the last week. It might not be the newest news because it's been out for about a week, but obviously we go live once a week. But the rule changes. So the first one, and I'm going to ask you what your take is, and I'll give mine after. So we'll go one by one. We're trying not to spend 30 minutes on this topic because we probably could. We know how our opinions are on this.
Right.
So keeping it short, simple, but getting your point across. How do you feel with the first rule change being the hip drop tackle? How do you feel about that being removed?
I don't mind it just for the simple fact that it has been a style of tackling that has injured a lot of guys, especially in their legs. And we've seen the trend in the past 2 years of lower body injuries in the NFL. And it's happening to a lot of high profile players, especially on the offense. I don't mind this one, but at the same time, like the NFL needs to figure out how these guys are supposed to tackle. Like, what is the legal tackle? Because nobody wants to see a game where there's 30 penalty flags. There has to be some sort of form, some sort of schooling to show these guys this is the correct way to do it without risking injury to yourself or somebody else. But in the same breath, like, these guys make millions of dollars. I'll pound this in till I'm dead and in the casket 6 feet down. These guys make millions of dollars to play a physical sport that they know that going into it. They've known it since they started in Pee Wee and worked their way up to the NFL that, hey, I'm playing a violent sport. I have the risk of being injured and possibly getting career-ending injuries that can bother me later on down the road in my life. But you compensated well for that.
Fan to fan says a game. I don't know what that means. But yeah, thanks, Shane. No, I mean, for me, what's hard for me is, and you see this every year. I feel like it's every other year there's a rule change with tackling. So I agree. First, going back some time. I mean, some of these make sense. I'm not saying that they all don't make sense, but just going to go through a very short period of events here. First you had the face mask tackle become illegal, which it should, by the way. Then you had the horse collar tackle became illegal. And then next thing you know, you had tackles like, you can't tackle too low on the quarterback. You can't tackle too high on the quarterback. Then it became the helmet to helmet, which, yes, makes sense, obviously. But at the same time, as a defender, there are times that when you're diving low, which is what you're supposed to do a lot of the time, you go for the knees, you try to get down to the low center of gravity so you can pull. And that's the way to tackle I was always taught when I played linebacker and defensive line, if you have a big running back or any big person you're trying to tackle, you want to get low enough to where you take away his body weight against him. Like, you don't want to dive at his feet because then you see people hurdle you, like you see all the time. Or, you go too high and you get stiff arm like Josh Norman did when it came to Derrick Henry. You want to hit around the knees, maybe a little bit lower. The problem is when you're doing that, sometimes you do have to lead with your helmet to get to that positioning. And what happens is a lot of times you see the offensive players also lower their helmet, make contact, and it's always the defender's fault. It just seems to be that way. So you can't go low, you can't go high, you can't grab here, you can't grab there. Then where the hell am I supposed to grab you to take you down?
Well, and you'll also see, last year in the Steelers-Browns game where Minka went low and blew Chubb's knee out. Like, he didn't know what to do in that situation. You can't go high on Chubb. For one, you might get flagged. And for two, he's going to literally bowl you over like a bowling ball hitting a pin.
Yeah. So, and it's funny seeing this take from Ryan Nelka because Ryan Nelka is actually a Ravens fan. So obviously the most talked about hip tackle of last year was the one on Mark Andrews. And I love the fact that he's being unbiased when given this take because he's even saying, like, I get the useless ones, like late ones, and that all makes sense. But, in a way, it'll never work because they can get hurt no matter the style of tackle. DeMar Hamlin's a perfect example. It can be a basic tackle. It can be anything. Like, you're constantly putting your head on the line, your back on the line, your body's on the line. Like, no matter what you do, you are let's say you're an average running back at 215 pounds, whatever it is, and you're meeting a 275-pound linebacker in the hole. That's never a good combination as far as if you're looking for the perfect way to go through there unscathed. It's not going to happen. That's where exactly what Ryan just says, what I'm about to just say. It's a gladiator thing. It really is. That's where the whole idea of this came from. Like there's a reason why sports stadiums are shaped the same way the Coliseum was, because it was meant to be a crazy event where you saw two men on a gridiron go at it.
Mono versus mono.
Yeah, and the problem is, and it takes away a lot. And I feel like for defenders this year, with the way pass interferences are, the way that you can't hit quarterbacks anymore. Like we saw 2 years ago, Mahomes runs towards the sideline, defender stops running, Mahomes turns back upfield and picks up 35 more yards, and everybody went, "Oh, that defender sucked." He had no choice. If he hits him there, it's a penalty. He doesn't hit him, Mahomes picks up 20 more yards, and he's a terrible DB for not reading the tackle properly. There's nothing he could have done in that scenario.
No.
You see this all the time. Like quarterbacks purposely underthrowing the ball to make the receiver come back for it, knowing it's going to draw a PI. So how about we do this? How about we stop penalizing the defense all the time, make all these rules to hurt the defense? And how about we start saying things like for example, we talked about it earlier this year on the show with the roughing with the intentional grounding rule has changed now, where they have basically they can throw the ball wherever they want, whenever they want. It's not a flag anymore. Yeah. At what point are we going to start saying, you know what? No longer can you throw the ball purposely short for a PI. No longer can a receiver make contact with the defender because the defender can't make contact with him. So let's make this balanced.
It won't happen because when the offense gets those calls, it makes it easier for them to put points on the board.
That's all this is about. I mean, that's all it's about is points. And hence, the next rule we'll get into, and I'll give my take first. I just want to let you close out the rule changes, is obviously, as you guys all know as well, there's also been the kickoff change. Now, this has been a weird one. Some people have loved this. I hate it. I think it is the most dumb thing I've ever seen. So as you guys know, they will now be kicking from just about the same spot. The kicker will be in roughly the same area as he was previous years. The return team and the defensive special teams are lined up 5 yards apart on the opposite side of the field, around the 35, around the 40 and the 35 or whatever it is. The return man catches it between the goal line and the 15-yard line, I want to say it is, or something like that, or the 20. And basically, you cannot move from the line and approach and attempt to make a tackle until the receiver has the ball and is running with the football. If it goes into if it's a touchback, automatic 35 yards. You go right to the 35-yard line automatically. I hate it. I think it is the dumbest thing I have heard in a long time. Yeah. And it's funny because I was also just mentioned to Bubba again, because he's the one podcast I have watched recently. It seems like everybody seems to think this is going to put more touchdowns on the board. It will, but not kick. I don't think kick returning is going to be any easier. If anything, now it's even more of a challenge because if you miss one block, whereas you had the whole field to run down before, where if you missed the block, well, somewhere 25 yards on the field, you have another guy ready to pick the block up. Now, if there's missed blocks, you're screwed. I mean, there's nowhere to go. I mean, you're very, very close to where the return man is.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
That's where I disagree.
I don't think so.
Because I feel like now, because the defenders can't engage with each other until that returner has the ball in his hands and has started running forward. So now it's going to be, to me, it's going to be easier for teams to design plays to block these players in certain ways to get that kick return to the other side. I hate it. I hate how the NFL contradicts itself. 2 years ago, it wanted to completely pretty much eliminate the kickoff. Now they want to revamp it to make it more flashy. And I don't like it when they change the originality of the NFL. I don't like it. And here's the thing. If these teams do design these plays to score more on these kickoff returns, it's going to be with asterisks. You think Devin Hester would have loved to be a kick returner with these kind of rules? He probably would have had 12.
I really don't know if it's
20.
I really don't know if I don't know if the touchdown difference is going to matter. I really don't know. I mean, it's 50-50. I don't think it's dramatic, but even if it is, I mean,
it's going to be easier to engage on a block. That guy's not running at you with a full head of steam.
But it's also harder to make up for one missed block at the same time, though. So, I mean, if you miss a block,
but they're going to be spaced out. They're going to be more spaced out, Rich.
Yeah, but I still think it's going to be a little bit harder than people think. And I mean, at the end of the day, I just think what the NFL is doing is slowly killing the entire game. I mean, it just feels like, and like, it really is going to become a flag football game at some point. I mean, I'll tell you right now, before my son is old enough to go to high school, my son's 2 years old, I will guarantee you this league is going to be even more pathetic than it is today. And we're going to get to a point where it's just going to be like a skills contest at that point. It's going to be like no defense is allowed because they're going to get rid of kicking altogether at some point.
It's essentially going to be a Pro Bowl for 17 weeks.
Well, they're going to get rid of kicking at some point. You can already tell. I mean, like, you know, you never see a kicker or a punter on the top 100. You don't hear anybody talk about the best kicker in the league getting a free agent deal or the best punter in the league getting a deal. You never hear about it because nobody cares.
Well, and here's the thing.
It's going to come down to a point, though, where people are going to say, hey, it's a waste of a roster spot. Why should I pay this kicker $8 million a year and fill a roster spot when I can sign a defensive player to rotate in and play safety for me or whatever it is? It's going to get to the point where they get rid of it altogether.
Do you think the way this layout is, possibly could eliminate special teams aces, like a guy like Matthew Slater or, you know, those type of guys? Because
you're going to stop seeing a lot of special team specialists at some point.
Right.
Because what made you a specialist was your ability to pursue the ball. Like when you're a defender and you're running full speed, can you get around those blocks that we're talking about? Can you make those great reads? Like, are you able to read where the return man is going to go before he does it, so you can put yourself in the right position?
Right.
You know, we had a guy named Chris Maragos in Philadelphia years ago where he was a Pro Bowler every year for special teams reasons. And you're going to see a lot of guys lose jobs because a lot of these guys were hired to be special team specialists. There's captains on your team that are literally only playing special teams.
Right.
And a lot of guys get their start there and actually prove themselves well enough to actually become starters in the NFL overall. So it's almost like a training ground for a lot of these different role players. So for me, it's going to hurt the league. I think it's going to hurt a lot of things. It's unfortunate. I'm not happy at all with the way that things are changing right now in the NFL, but I mean, there's only more to come. That's 3 this year already. You know, the intentional grounding, kickoff rules, and the hip tackle. So it's just getting uglier and uglier. But let me see here. A couple comments. Ryan Nelkett said, it's impossible to run without your legs. True. Fan to Fan said, paid to play a freaking game, violent, but still a game. Robbie said, if you don't want to get hurt, don't play football. Offensive players should be penalized for baiting defenders. I fully agree. Again, I agree. But like Freight Train said, we can also agree that the NFL will not penalize offenses more often because of the fact that it will take points off of the scoreboard. I mean, that's all it comes down to. I mean, if Mahomes throws a ball to the a 70-yard bomb to the end zone, and let's say there's 30 seconds left in the game, they're trailing by 6. The NFL wants that, whether they score or not. The NFL loves the fact that's going to keep building viewership because you want to see those crazy final moment plays. So the PI helped. Okay, well, there's some contact, PI, they get the ball at the 1-yard line. They got 30 seconds on the first down. Let's see if they can score the ball. And it draws ratings. That's all they care about. What it comes down to, though, I think that people don't realize this, is as fans at some point, we have to stop tuning in. Like, that's what has to happen at some point is we have to say.
So you're calling for a boycott of the NFL? At
some point. I mean, if this continues the way
that will never happen.
No, but if you think.
It will never happen.
They're already talking about losing a lot of viewers last year in certain situations. I mean, I'm telling you right now, if it becomes even worse than it is now, it's not fun to watch a team score 85 points uninterrupted. It's just boring. I'm a defensive guy. You know how I am. I've come on this show. I talk about top 5 defenses way more than I talk about top 5 offenses. It's just, to me, being a defender is one of the hardest things in the world, and now it's super hard. I mean, at this point, playing safety,
especially cornerback. Cornerback is the hardest.
Even the secondary in general. I mean, being a safety is tough. Being a corner is tough. But at this point, it's like rocket science. I mean, at this point, like, I don't even know if anybody qualifies to be a safety anymore. But speaking of that, so, I mean, obviously we talk about top 5 defenses and offense. We talk about all that kind of stuff as we go through. We want to give a quick thing here. I saw Nick Wright doing this, and I can't stand that guy. He is, like, literally, like, he makes me want to, like, off myself sometimes. His takes are just outlandish. Like, he just says stuff on purpose just to get, like, some kind of reaction. I love what you said the other day. Freight Train's comparison of Nick Wright was a younger version of Skip Bayless. And now I can't see him any different. I was literally watching a video on my phone like an hour ago, and all I kept seeing was.
I feel like Nick is like his stepson. Yeah.
It's bad. But speaking of that, though, so one thing we want to take a crack at, I think this is a lot of fun whenever people do stuff like this. The way too early, because obviously it's been after free agency now, and a lot of people have different opinions, and there's a lot of rumors, and everybody's talking trash on each other and whatever. I've been having a battle with a Bills fan all morning this morning. Looks like he actually just messaged me. My Facebook's going crazy. Top 2 early power rankings 1 through 10. Now, I actually made one up. Now, at the same time, though, I'm going to put mine up, right? And then
Okay.
I'll run through them. We'll go one by one. We'll make it pretty quick, obviously.
Mhm.
But I want you to give me your top 10 as we run through, and you feel free to combat my choices, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Some of the ones I have on here that are a little low, I'm only putting them low because there's certain question marks, and we'll get to that. All right, so let's see here. The top 10. Look how ugly this is. I love it. You can tell I threw it together with a lot of time, more like 10 seconds. Well, the stupid MacBook doesn't do copy and paste. I have to literally screenshot everything. So it makes it really hard to make a really clean image. But so my number one, and I was at the go Super Bowl champs. I mean, you have to. I mean, it's hard to say that this team's going to come up and bully Kansas City or San Fran. As of right now, on paper, in my opinion, Kansas City's probably not number one, but they've earned the right to stay number one since it's still the offseason. They just won. Shit happens. So for me, right now, number one in the power rankings going into the draft, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. Who's your number one?
The Chiefs. You can't go against them. You really can't.
Nope. I just feel like you can't. I think it's disrespectful at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I went with the reigning NFC champions, the San Francisco 49ers. Would you agree with that one?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, because they didn't really lose much.
Nope. And they still have Ayuk on there right now. I mean, if they were to lose Ayuk, that might have dropped them to 3 or 4 just because I think that is a pretty big part of what they do. But they've kept most of their key pieces.
They're essentially running it back.
Yeah, anything that they lost was minor. I mean, they didn't really lose anything major. They went out and got a couple other guys. So I had to put them back at number 2 just because they haven't lost anything. Can Philadelphia, Detroit get better and surprise them? Who knows? But as of right now, San Fran number 2. Here's my dog. Number 3, I have the Baltimore Ravens. You're gonna argue this one, I know.
Yeah, I think they're up a little high.
What makes you say
they lost some stuff? Yes, they added Derrick Henry, but I still don't trust their wide receiving corps. Defense, you lost a couple key guys. I think, Ravens fans will sit here and deny it and call me an a-hole, but I think they're going to feel the loss of Patrick Queen on that defense to go with Roquan Smith.
My problem is, so far, Lamar's only gotten better. And there's no argument to that. I mean, you can look at his numbers. You can watch the film. He's just gotten dramatically better in every aspect. They're going to have Mark Andrews back healthy this year, as well as Isaiah Likely, who was a stud last year. The run game with Derrick Henry is definitely an improvement over top of what they had in past years, especially with the injury problems with Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. Them guys always getting knocked out early in the year. They haven't had a solid, healthy run game in what feels like a decade. Then on top of it, they lost Patrick Queen, which I think will be a big loss. Don't get me wrong. I just feel like I forget the hell the guy's name is off the top of my head right now, but the backup there is actually a really good player as well. And Baltimore is the king of rotating middle linebackers. That's just what they do. They always have a new middle linebacker that's top of the league.
But they also have John Harbaugh as their head coach.
But
who is the most overrated head coach in the NFL.
I'm not a Harbaugh fan, but at the same time, I think when you have a quarterback like Lamar, you're going to win a lot of football games no matter what happens. I mean, he's going to win you some, he's going to lose you some. But
John Harbaugh consistently loses 2 to 3 games for Baltimore a year by himself.
I have the Ravens at 3 just because, like I said, I mean, they didn't lose a ton. They did lose a couple guys. But
I'm switching. I'm going to switch Baltimore. And I'm going with Robbie. He just commented. I'm moving the Texans to the number 3. I like how their offseason went.
I'll get to that.
I think CJ Stroud is the real deal. And I think they're absolutely going to make a lot of noise this year.
I'll get to that shortly. All right. And then number 4, I went with the Detroit Lions, a team that's getting better and better and better. I didn't feel right putting them at 4 just because I always have this problem with Jared Goff where I just feel like I just can't like the guy. I've tried so many times. It's just so hard for me to like Jared Goff. But they do have the weapons. I mean, Ross, St. Brown. I mean, they ran the ball extremely well last year, which I didn't think they were going to, by the way. I didn't think they had the guys in place to do so. But Gibbs is getting better. They're just a great all-around offense. Defensively, there's some things they could probably get better with. They obviously lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They lost a couple other guys as well. But I think they're in a good enough position to where they're going to win football games. And you could definitely drop them on this list.
I'm gonna go ahead and do you a favor because I know exactly what you did here. You actually wanted to put the Eagles there.
No.
But you're like, what? No, I don't want to come off as a homer.
I did not. I'm gonna get to that.
Another NFC team.
No, I'm gonna get
above
to
them. No, I'm putting Eagles number 4. I think last year was a fluke for you guys, and you are one of the best teams in the NFC.
I think the Eagles belong at 5 because for me they're halfway. I mean, for me, like there's things about them, and the reason why I put them at 5 in my mind that makes it appropriate and nothing to do with that. It's I love half the things about this team, but I hate some things about this team, and I'm so torn on. I felt like they definitely belonged in the top 10. I couldn't figure out where I wanted to put them. Parts of me was like, I want to be a homer and put them at 1 in some ways. I know we could be explosive. Like, if we were to meet my expectations of what we saw a couple of years ago, they could end up being number 1 on this list by the end of the year. Who knows? But if they do what they did last year, they might not even be on this list by week 10. So we'll see what happens. So for me, just logically speaking, they have the weapons in place. I mean, there's no argument that the offense is great. I mean, it's hard to find a weakness on that offense. Obviously, the loss of Jason Kelsey sucks, but I feel like, with him handpicking Cam Jurgens, I believe in Kelsey and whatever he worked with. And him and Jurgens spent the entire last year working together in OTAs and camp last year. So I believe in that. So I have them at 5 just because I don't know what you're going to get out of them. I mean, they could end up coming out and being the NFC champs. But what we saw last year could also happen. They might start off extremely hot or slow. Who knows? I mean, this team is always one of those teams that always seems to blow my mind. So I put them at 5. Number 6, and this team I actually want to put higher. This team I thought about putting over top of Philadelphia. I thought about putting Houston over Philadelphia as well. I was having a really hard time putting Philly at 5. I almost put them at 7. But I'm taking the New York Jets. And hear me out. And people keep asking, I keep seeing Robbie in the comments, how did the Jets and Bengals make the top 10? I'm going to tell you why the Jets made the top 10. The Jets have had a top 5 defense every year for the last 3 years. It's not even been close. I mean, they won football games with such low scores and terrible quarterback play. I mean, they had Zach Wilson. If you win 4 games with Zach Wilson as your quarterback, that tells me your defense is doing something because Zach Wilson's not scoring you 35 points. Even if Rodgers, let's just say Rodgers is 70% of his MVP version of himself. With guys like Garrett Wilson, guys like Mike Williams, you have a running game with Hall. You have all these weapons on the offensive side of the football. And then you turn around and go, okay, top 5 defense. That's getting better. I mean, for example, they lose Bryce Huff in free agency, right? They lose him to the Eagles. The Eagles pick him up. What do they do today? They trade for Hassan Reddick to fill the exact spot that they just lost. I mean, this team has lost nothing. Then they went out and got Tyron Smith, who has only played 39 of his last 66 games. It's obviously frightening a little bit, but in those 39 games, he only allowed 3 sacks total over 39 games. That means 2 seasons and 5 weeks worth of only 4 sacks or 3 sacks. They went out and just made a ton of moves on the offensive line. It just feels like, for me, the Jets are going all in. And obviously, the reason why I put them at 6 and they're not higher for me, because I think they will be higher on this list at the end of the year, is just the fact that we don't know what we're going to get from Aaron Rodgers just yet. Robbie says the Eagles are not top 5. Like I just said, Robbie, like some people will say that like Freight has him at 4. He's on an Eagles fan.
I have him at 4.
Some people have him in the top 5 as well. I actually, just like I just said, I want to put them at 7. I'm only putting them at 5 because at least we know what we have there. Like the Jets.
I mean, let's let Robbie defend himself on why he doesn't think that they're top 5.
That's fine. Yeah, feel free to go in the comments and let us know why that is. I mean, listen, one thing I promised about doing this show was I'm never going to do anything that's going to be biased. I mean, and I've made that very clear. I talk Eagles hardly ever, and I try to keep it to a bare minimum. And even when people talk about it, like
hardly ever, like, just once a week.
I usually it's like a very small comment. I mean, how the Jason Kelsey retirement thing I spoke on for 3 minutes, not even. But I want to put them lower on the list. And I'll get to the reason why. Again, like the Jets, the reason why I have them at 6 and they're below the Eagles, for example, is just the fact of we don't know what we're going to get yet. We haven't seen all this come together yet with Aaron Rodgers. We saw him play for 34 seconds last year. And that's why they fell to 6 in my book. But how do you feel about Jets at 6? Who else would you put there? Would you leave them there? What's your thought?
I like them there. I'm in agreement with you. I think they're going to win the division next year. Yeah. I'll say it right now.
Yep.
They're gonna incline while Buffalo has slightly declined.
Well, notice how Miami's on this list. I caught a lot of flack for that from a buddy I showed this to. He's a Miami fan. He's like, "Why is my team not here?" And I can give you a million reasons why. You lost half your defense.
Where do you want to start?
You lost half your defense. Your quarterback loses a ton of efficiency once it gets cold outside. And if Tyreek Hill were to get healthy, your team would be absolutely dead in the water from there on out.
Yep. Jalen Waddle can't stay on the field.
No, your running backs is by committee, which is a great running back by committee, but you can't rely on them to do what they did last year. I mean, Mostert had an absolute freak year. He actually won me my fantasy league pretty much. So Miami did miss this list. I would say they're probably 11 or 12.
That's sustainable. I don't think that's sustainable with Mostert.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, the Dolphins are like 11 or 12. If I were to have to go any further than the top 10, they'd probably be somewhere in like 11 to 13. Okay, so we agree on 6. Now 7, I know you said you put the Texans higher, and I get that. And again, and actually, Robbie said they shouldn't be on. He said they should be higher. The reason why they're not higher, and I'm going to make this very, very clear, is we see sophomore slumps all the time. Lamar had a sophomore slump. Most quarterbacks do. I mean, we can be honest and say that most quarterbacks, I would say 85%. You have those freak ones like Patrick Mahomes and, certain guys who just don't seem to have one. Or they're so bad their first year, you can't call their second year. So like Josh Allen had a very, very rough start in Buffalo. So you can't really call his sophomore year a slump because his rookie year was a pretty bad year. What worries me is we haven't seen consistency from this team yet. And it's not a knock on them because they're young. I mean, you can't see consistency. Tank Dell got hurt last year. Can he stay healthy? Can he still be a big part of the team? Remember, a lot of these guys were unknowns. Nobody was game planning for these guys last year. Now the spotlight is on you. Now the spotlight is shining bright on the whole team. No longer are we considering Houston, whatever, they're a bum team. They're going to finish at the bottom of the division. Because we all thought that last year. You have to be honest. Like, nobody thought that they were going to jump to being one of these top teams.
I thought the Steelers were going to absolutely annihilate them, and then the Steelers lost by like 30 points.
Well, listen, and again, and this is not me bashing their free agency. I mean, they've had a phenomenal free agency. They've had a phenomenal draft last year. Huge 100%. Year. But with how young this team is, I could see them losing a couple of the games they won last year. I mean, if you look, they had multiple games where they won on final drives or won within the last 2-3 drives of a game. And just because you bring in a lot of free agents, I'm an Eagles fan. I know this, by the way, from the Vince Young proclaimed super team era of 2010-2011 season, which was an absolute dumpster fire. Sometimes shoving a ton of free agents together with a bunch of young guys does not always go the way that you think it's going to go. Not saying it's going to happen. I expect them to have a huge year, but they're only number 7 because, again, we haven't seen the whole thing put together. The Jets have a little bit more experience than the Houston Texans do as far as the players overall. I mean, even Garrett Wilson and Hall have more time in the league than a lot of the guys on Houston has. And with Aaron Rodgers, we don't know what we're going to get, but we do know he was an MVP once. So you have to put that into consideration. The only reason why Houston fell this low, look at the rest of these teams. Every one of these teams has been proven the last multiple years. San Fran, and they can speak for themselves. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, the Detroit Lions, and how nasty they've been offensively the last couple of years. The Eagles were only 2 years removed from a Super Bowl appearance. They also started 9-0 last year before crumbling. And the Jets do have a guy who was a former MVP in Aaron Rodgers. That's the only reason why I got Houston at number 7.
Okay. Yeah.
And you have them at 3.
Right here is where I would flip-flop Texans and the Ravens.
I just can't do it. I just can't. I just think the Ravens have to be. They have to be the second highest team in the AFC. Because at that point, I would say then you can't put Baltimore below 6. Well, actually, at that point, Baltimore would go 5 and Philadelphia would go 6. That's what I would do at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't, man. I can't do it. But number 8 is Buffalo. Buffalo always wins games. We saw them win games without a good defense before. They lost a ton of guys. I'm a little concerned.
This one's tough.
I'm concerned, but I still think Josh Allen gives you 10 wins minimum. I mean, they're still a 10-win team, 11-win team, and we don't. And as we know, there's not a ton of those teams out there. I have them at 8 because, in my opinion, they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. They're not going to go from 11-6 and then drop to 8-9 all of a sudden just because they lost a couple of guys. Tre'Davious White had been out for 2 years, pretty much. Poyer was getting a little bit beat up. Again, all good players. Not bashing any of those players. I also want to see what they do in the draft. I have a feeling they're going to go receiver in the draft at some point here and try to make up for that Gabe Davis.
They have to.
I feel like they're going to have to. I mean, and James Cook had a great year last year. He just didn't have the touchdown production. He only had 2 all year. I think that's going to change as well. I mean, with them losing Gabe Davis, I think you're going to see a lot more attention to the run game, which will also allow Josh Allen to make less mistakes. And I feel like this for his overtime career has to end at some point. He has to start winning games in overtime. I mean, if you want to be one of the best quarterbacks ever, you can't lose every fucking overtime performance you've ever had.
Right, yeah.
But I put them at 8, and they're that low for that reason.
We'll put them at 8, but
I like them there. I like them there. I mean, who else do you put there? You're not going to put Dallas at 8. You're not going to put Cincinnati at 8. We agreed that Miami doesn't belong on the list. I mean, it's hard to find a replacement for Buffalo at number 8.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody else of that magnitude that you can really swap with them and go, okay, I feel really good about this.
I mean,
because Minnesota lost Kirk Cousins. I mean, you know who I actually forgot to put on here? I actually apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I am actually going to change this list live time here.
Bro, you're about to steal my thunder.
I'm pushing Buffalo to number 9, and I'm actually going to put Dallas over Cincinnati. I'm going to knock Cincinnati out of my top 10 here. So Dallas is going to stay 10. Okay, Buffalo is going to fall to 9. Atlanta is going to go to number 8.
Thanks for stealing my thunder, bro.
You're welcome. That's what I do. I completely I just up until I was thinking about teams that belong, like teams that were good before that, like, they're not going to have the same success without Kirk Cousins.
Now, I will like to see Atlanta go defensive heavy in their draft this year.
Yeah,
I think they need a lot of help on the defensive side. I don't think they'll have any problems putting points on the board.
Yep.
As long as they stay healthy and whatnot. But they definitely need some help on that defensive side of the ball.
So yeah, and that's why I'm not going to boot Dallas out of here. I mean, Dallas won the NFC East last year. They still have a pretty good team, even though they lost a ton of pieces, and they've done absolutely pretty much nothing except for sign long snappers and things like that. But I still have to respect them enough to put them in the top 10. You have to leave them in there.
Well, and they still have Whack Desk.
They still have a seed. Yeah, and he'll win your regular. If this was a playoff prediction, you would not see Dallas on here. Or like if you saw anything past the wild card, Dallas would not be on here.
Yeah.
But they will stay number 10. Buffalo falls to 9. Atlanta goes to number 8. How do you feel about that move?
Yeah, I will do. I will put Atlanta there at that 8 spot.
Yep.
Number 9. I hate Dallas, but I'll put them there. I'll put Dallas at 9, and I am putting. I'm not even trying. You already know who I'm going to say.
Fucking homer.
And I'm not even being a homer. I like what they've done in the offseason. They got 2 quarterbacks. They got the guy I wanted. They needed consistent quarterback play to contend. I am putting the Pittsburgh Steelers in at number 10.
I can't put Pittsburgh in there yet just because for me, there's still, again, the draft will solve some things potentially. But what I'm concerned about is you went out, you signed Kez, you went out, you signed Van Jefferson, you went out, you signed.
Well, that's how it is in 8 spots, 8 through 10, though. All 3 of these teams have.
But the Steelers have Pickens, but like, if I were to ask you Stephon Diggs prime, which he is still in right now, he still is a top tier receiver. You're taking Diggs over him for now because we haven't seen Pickens play enough yet. Like if you're looking at career longevity and like how consistent Stephon Diggs has been, like you have to take Diggs over top of Pickens. You have to. Like number 9. Who are you taking? A healthy Jamar Chase or George Pickens? I mean, as of right now, from what we know, you're going to go Jamar Chase over Pickens, at least for now. That might change, but you're going to do that.
This isn't wide receiver standings. This is overall team standings.
I know, but I'm saying I think that's what's going to bite you in the ass. Longevity, in my mind, is if I'm looking at 8, 9,
I think
and
Pittsburgh
10,
100% has a better team than Cincinnati.
I don't think so.
When you look at the over. Defensively. Sure,
I mean, because who are you going to go? Are you going to go Joe Burrow or are you going to go Fields or Wilson? You're going to go Burrow. I mean, healthy Burrow. If he's 100%, you're going Burrow.
Yeah, but he has no offensive line.
Jamar Chase is dramatically better than any
Jamar Chase. They're probably
division.
going to trade T. Higgins.
But for right now, they haven't. So we don't know. And again,
who's
the draft
running back?
The draft have to change my mind.
Who's playing running back? You let Joe Mixon go.
They picked up crap. I forget who they picked up. I don't remember who they picked up.
I think Cincinnati is going to be overrated.
I think they're going to be good enough. I think they'll finish number 2 in the AFC North.
I think they finish with maybe 9 wins if they're lucky.
And I think Pittsburgh will be right there with them around 9-10.
But
11 tops.
But we won the tiebreaker.
Potentially, we'll see. We'll see, man. I mean, we'll see. I mean, again, this is why we call it too early predictions.
I'll say it right now. Don't blue in the face. The AFC North division is the toughest division in football right now.
I just can't put Pittsburgh in there yet until I see what they can do. Because, like I said, like right now, the problem with them going on the top 10 list is every other team on this list that we're looking at have somebody proven that can play the position at their team. Like we saw CJ in Houston. We know Josh Allen. We know Aaron Rodgers, what he's capable of. We know Hurts. We know Goff. We know Jackson. We know Purdy. We know Mahomes. We know Burrow. We know Dak. And again, we know Dak's a great regular season quarterback.
You also knew Russell Wilson before the Denver debacle happened.
But I'm just saying, but we have no idea what he's going to do in Pittsburgh. Will he be the Denver Wilson or will he be the Seattle Wilson? Or is he going to be a mix of both? And we don't know. That's the whole problem. And like, again, we don't even know for sure if Wilson's going to be the full season starter. We might see Fields come in at some point.
I doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah, but like I'm just saying we have no idea. And you and I have agreed behind the scenes that Fields has to take over at some point this year, so if he's worth signing next year.
I'm just looking at like the overall body of work of the Steelers season last year,
and
this is it for my Steelers takes.
I knew you were going to do it.
All right, I didn't want to do it, but I have to.
Even if I didn't open the show with it, you would have put Pittsburgh in this top 10, and we would have talked about it anyway.
If the Steelers would have had consistent quarterback play, you could have added at least 2 more wins onto their record last year.
And that's the only reason why they're not on here is we don't know if, even with these guys, if it's going to be consistent quarterback play.
It's going to be better than what they had, without a doubt. I don't even doubt that for 1 second.
We think. But that being said, so another, and it's funny, it actually kind of sucks. I've been seeing this all over Twitter ever since we talked about this. I was like, oh, okay, nobody's really talking about this. Would be a good one. It just popped up on one of my pages. But recently, I've been seeing this a lot. However, still want to get our take on it quickly here on the show. Who are you taking? Adrian Peterson versus LaDainian Tomlinson. Now, apparently PFF started like a war over this topic. It's been all over like every Facebook page the last 24 hours. And it's been very 50-50. It's funny. I think a lot of younger kids and like newer NFL fans are leaning towards Peterson because they were able to see what he was obviously drafted in what, 06, 07, 08, whatever it was. And at that point, Tomlinson was actually on the downside of his career. He's getting older at that point, already pushing his 30s. A lot of older people, 30s or older, are all taking LT, which is pretty funny. Who are you? And again, you can't really pick wrong.
No.
But who are you taking? Are you taking AP or are you taking? Both Hall of Famers, both been MVP at least once.
Yeah.
Both have multiple All Pros, both multi-time Pro Bowlers. Who are you taking?
If I'm looking at the overall body of work and what they attributed to their perspective offenses, I have to side with LaDainian Tomlinson. And I was telling myself, listen, you got to come up with an argument for Adrian Peterson. Like, you watched AP absolutely rip defenses apart. Rich Smoke, who he's going with. You can't agree on the same guy. But I can't come up with an argument, dude. Like, LT could literally do it all. You're talking power running to the outside, running past people, receiving the ball.
And for anybody who doesn't know, he had a year where he had 100 grabs, where he had 782 receiving yards, but at the same time also had 1,400 rushing yards that very same year.
That's absurd. That's
absurd. You don't see that anymore.
That doesn't happen. Yes. Even the dogs agree.
I don't know. They're yelling. They're always yelling at somebody. I apologize. Stop. Pretty sure my buddy's here, so that's probably why they're going crazy. But yeah, I'm going LT. I have that exact jersey upstairs in my closet as we speak. I was going to wear it, but I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. It's too much of a cliche kind of thing to do. Right. But listen, 32 touchdowns in a single season. You'll probably never see that ever again, or it'll be a while. And they also have an extra game to do that in today's NFL. It's not 16 games anymore. But at the same time, both of these guys, what makes it hard, if I'm being unbiased, is yardage is pretty similar. I think Peterson has 1,300 more yards than LT, but he also played an additional 13 games. I think we can all agree LT in 13 games as a starter somewhere, he probably could have picked up the same amount of yards. It's really hard because both of them MVPs, and even if you want to use college and NFL and merge them, both of them were dominant in college. Both of them were top 10 picks in the NFL draft. Many, many years, 6 years separated, but LT, people forget he had one of the craziest careers we've ever seen from a running back. Carried a Chargers team to the AFC Championship game pretty much by himself with a young Rivers, and also played with Drew Brees before Drew Brees was Drew Brees. It's so hard to go against LT's body of work. Whether you look at one season, like there's MVP season side by side, it's so hard to pick AP.
It is.
And I have his jersey upstairs too.
And we're not throwing shade at AP. No. I'll take either one of them.
You put these guys up next to most of the other ones, and you're going to pick AP over somebody else. You're going to take LT over some. It's just when you put them together, it's so hard because you can't go wrong no matter which way you go. It's hard. It really is. But yeah, so feel free to let us know in the comments who you guys take. I'm taking LT. It looks like Freight Train changed his mind, and he went LT as well.
I went LT. I couldn't come up with an argument, bro. I just couldn't.
I knew you couldn't. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And real fast here, so before we hop on our next topic here, one thing I did want to hit on quickly. So as you guys know, we've talked about it a little bit. We do have a couple sponsors on the show. Wanted to make sure we give them a little bit of love here. The first one we talk about all the time, AJB Sports Shop and Collectibles. Make sure you guys go on there for any of your fan needs, from kid stuff to dog stuff to clocks to lights to you name it. He has it. And for all you Steelers fans that watch this show, like a bunch of drug addicts, you guys watch every show with the Steelers analysts on there, I feel like. Terrible towels are like $7, which you can't beat that. And then the other sponsor, I will let Freight Train announce here.
Yes. So our newest sponsor is Builder Bros Construction. Builder Bros Construction is a company that helps people out in need when disaster strikes, meaning weather, a tornado, hail damage, all that strikes your house, wrecks your roof, rips your siding off, Builder Bros comes in and works with you to help get those problems rectified through your insurance
I
company.
like that. I always like
They
that
have,
word.
they have rectified.
Continue the promo. Tell your brother-in-law I was just trying to make his promo more exciting.
Right. But they work with you and your insurance company to get the maximum allowed out of your policy to fix your home for your deductible. They go through, they'll fight with these insurance companies when they try to take stuff away from you to save money in their pockets when they have no reason to do that. But for the month of July, up to the month of July, they are giving somebody a free roof for Christmas in July.
And we're going to have that commercial soon, right? I think we're going to air our first ever
we're gonna air the
commercial.
commercial. Yes,
Yep.
but you can actually go now and get registered for that. You can register yourself, or you can register somebody like a family member, a friend who is in desperate need
Yep.
of a roof on their home. Rich, do we have yes, right here. You're going to want to go to builderbros.org and just fill that out, and you or somebody else will be nominated for that free roof.
It's an awesome program, man. It's actually really cool that he's doing that. I mean, as you guys know, or you may not know, I do work in insurance, and I do see the difficulty it can be to get your roof fixed. You have to have somebody come out. They got to look at it. Then you got to find somebody to come out and do an estimate, and it can be extremely difficult. And the most common thing I hear every single day is, "Oh, this feels like a ripoff. This guy's charging me this. This guy's trying to charge me that," and whatever it is. So definitely something to check out. Right now, they are only in the state of Ohio. However, he did mention that for the giveaway, specifically because we're going to be advertising him a lot in the Pennsylvania area, he will be working on getting the licensing done for PA. So anybody in PA, you are also still able to win this giveaway. Free roof, can't beat it. So
you got the green light.
Yeah,
you got the green light.
So that's awesome, man. And I'm glad that we finally got the logo on the show. It took us long enough.
Yeah.
And really, so obviously we're running pretty close on time. We did start 6 minutes later, so we'll run a little bit here. But so the one thing I was going to ask you about, now obviously we're going to skip some topics that we had planned because our guest was unable to make it, but we will have a Buccaneers fan next Thursday at 8 p.m.
Next week.
And we will be here on Thursday at 8 p.m. Rain, snow, or shine, we will be here.
Yes.
In the wonderful PA. It's very hard to know what the weather's ever going to be like. But I saw this as well, and I know that me and you were talking about a lot, but it was pretty interesting because of some of the names that we have in here. There was a top draft ranking by position. So like their letter grades for each group. And I thought this was pretty interesting. And I think that you even said that you had a couple of things in here you weren't happy about that you would change. And we'll hit on those quick. And you'll see them at the bottom of your screen as well. But right now, the quarterback. So I'll just go through the ratings and just let me know at the end what you would change. So we have quarterbacks here rated at an A-, and again, this is for the whole category. We have running backs as a C grade, wide receivers the highest on the list, A+. Offensive tackles, we have an A grade. Centers, guards, so basically interior linemen, we're looking at a C+. DT is a B. Edge rushers basically a B-. Linebackers a C+. Corners are an A, and a safety is a C+. What on here would you change? What stands out? First of all, what's just the first thing that stands out on here for you?
The biggest one for me, and that's because I paid close attention to them for a while now, even before my team got a middle linebacker in free agency, was the linebackers, and I think there's a lot better talent out there than a C+ grade.
I thought it should have been
especially
a solid B.
Yes, especially in the middle part, in the middle linebackers. Like you got some pedigree there, like Jeremiah Trotter Jr.'s out there out of Clemson, who's I think going to be a solid middle linebacker. And then you got somebody on the lower end like Tommy Eichenberg, who plays for Ohio State University, who is a solid tackler, plays his position work. If I had to put like an NFL comp on him, I would say he'd be like a Leighton Vander Esch without the neck injuries.
It's funny. It's funny how screwed Dallas has gotten. I mean, they've had two let's be honest, all pro caliber middle linebackers back to back with Sean Lee and Vander Esch, and both of them, man, it's just the injury bug just beat the hell out of both of them. And it sucks. I mean, you see it with every team, and we all have those guys that it's like, oh my God, imagine if he stayed healthy. But I just feel like Dallas has gotten the worst luck with middle linebackers. I mean, even when they got Keith Brooking back in the day from Atlanta when he first came to Dallas, got hurt like right away, and I'm like, you guys just can't keep a middle linebacker healthy to save your lives.
Yeah.
Brooking was a beast back in the day, by the way. Whenever you watch his Atlanta tape, but for me, what stood out. And you can argue this however you want. It really what this letter grade comes down to is, do you believe in the hype or do you not believe in the hype, which is the quarterback position being an A-. If you believe in the hype, A- or an A.
It's way too high.
If you super believe in the hype, A+, I can see people putting A+ because I know some people truly believe that these guys are like going to be iconic. A- is what they're giving them, which I think is fair for a PFF type company where they have to give into some of the hype, but at the same time be somewhat subjective. So I see why they chose an A-. But I'm going to be honest, I'd give this a B+ or a B. I mean, I truly
go straight B.
I truly believe that half these guys, if not more than half, are not going to do a thing. I mean, there's not. I mean, and it's not the first year we've been sold a bunch of stuff. I mean, you look at the draft with Brock Purdy, half of them are now career backups, so they were absolutely terrible. And he was the last pick of the whole draft, and he's the only one to pan out. You go back to Tom Brady's draft, and he's obviously the best one in the entire draft, and he was drafted with the last pick in the 6th round.
I think these rankings and these people around the NFL take way too much stock into how a guy looks at the NFL combine.
The only thing I will say is I do like the offensive tackles being an A. I would actually understand if that got moved to an A+, only because right now, as it's projected, there are 7 offensive tackles going in the 1st round, which is almost unheard of. I mean, you always see a couple, and usually fans hate it because it's not the most glorifying position to come in and make all these stats. But 7 offensive tackles are on the board as of right now for the offensive tackle position. Defensive ends kind of shocked me being a B-. I thought that should have been a little bit higher just because there's like 5 or 6 of them in the 1st round of the mock draft, like Chop Robinson and all them guys as well. I would probably give them a B+, to be honest, or maybe a solid B, at least a little bit of an upgrade. But overall, I think some of these are right. I think a safety should be a C-, to be honest with you. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. Yes, that's pun intended for Kool-Aid McKinstry. Yeah, that was meant to be a thing. Like wide receivers, I would say an A. First of all, I don't ever believe in A+, because A+ means like 4 of these guys are sure things. Like they're definitely going to happen, and you just don't know that. I mean, I feel like A is the highest I'll ever give a letter grade for players I haven't seen play yet. Now, if you're talking about like CeeDee Lamb or whatever, sure, give them an A+ if you want. But we don't know who these guys are. But yeah, I mean, the rankings are always interesting. Obviously, there's some things you could change here. I think running backs is appropriate. C is about right. Centers and guards, there's not too many. There are some good ones. So, I mean, you can go B if you want or B-. Whatever.
Well, and it tells you a lot about what people think about the running back class by how fast the guys on the free agent market went.
Yeah. And well, and like, not only that, but like a team like Houston, who's already really young, some would say, hey, why wouldn't they draft a halfback in the draft to keep it, keep the young guys coming in? They chose to trade for Joe Mixon, who's kind of been injury prone the last couple of years,
right?
And they chose to go veteran rather than, hey, let's go draft one of these young guys in the 1st round. And I'm like, okay, that's a sign right there that these GMs are not sold. Not to mention, we all know that running backs are going to be a big push topic in the 2nd and 3rd round. It always is. Like they just, because of all the mistakes made in the past, like Ricky Williams, that huge trade between with New Orleans back in the day, whatever. It's just you're not going to see it a lot anymore.
There's only 2 that I'm really sold on though in the running back class. You got Blake Corum and the kid from Notre Dame.
Corum's a little slow for me. That's my only concern about Blake Corum. I mean, you don't got to be the fastest guy. We've seen that in the past, but like a lot of the time, it is usually like we talked about on Bubba's show one time. Some things you're right. Like some things do translate well. Like you're never going to get slower per se, but you're never going to get faster either. Like you're in your early 20s. You're pretty much at the speed you're going to be, or if anything, you're going to go downhill at a certain point with an injury, whatever. And he's already running like 4.63 or something like that. Imagine him with one knee injury coming back after rehab. He's probably running a 4.75 at that point. I always say a major knee injury is going to tack on at least 1/10 of a second to your 40 time. So one serious knee injury for that guy and he's in trouble. So I mean, for me, what concerns me is like there's nobody in this draft that's like, oh my God, that guy could revolutionize football. Like last year we saw Jahmyr Gibbs. We also saw what's his name? I don't know why it's slipping my mind. We saw Bijan Robinson. So we had some running backs last year. We actually saw 1st round running backs for the first time in a while. I just think GMs are too scared. I mean, it's such an easy position to miss on. Not to mention, there's so many of them that are serviceable. Like if you would have told me that Chuba Hubbard was going to be the future starter for the Carolina Panthers, I would have laughed at you. Like he's a good rotational guy. He's a guy that you can utilize in certain scenarios. But him and Miles Sanders being your backup, your backfield in Carolina is terrifying. But yeah, yeah, it's so hard to grade these guys ahead of time. It's so hard. But yeah, man. And then, I mean, the only other thing I was going to hit on was just the TV streaming, which we can hold off on for a little while. But before we get off of here, and obviously it's a Friday night, and I'm sure everybody has a lot better things to do than sit here and listen to two guys talk trash. That's what we do ultimately. That's what, the whole banter. I tried to put banter in the name of the show just so you guys knew that's what we were here for.
Yeah.
Why disguise the fact of who we are? But before we get off of here, is there anything that you look forward to seeing over the next week, or maybe something that you're kind of excited to see before we get to the draft time?
I'm just going to kind of dive in and look at the prospects more in depth of the draft. I think free agency is kind of really slowed down. I think most of the teams are waiting until after the draft.
Still some stars in there. Yeah.
There is. There's a couple like centers and offensive linemen out there that were really good, but they're coming off injuries. So I think teams
there's still some receivers and corners out there too.
Yeah, but I think for that aspect, it's really going to start slowing down and coming to a halt until after the draft. So I'm just going to put my focus really on that and see,
usually
who the Steelers are.
Usually like 3-4 days after the draft, you see the free agency book open back up again. You start seeing some guys get moved around depending on,
teams miss on guys.
Yeah. We were like, oh, wow, we were expecting him to be available. Then we got robbed. So now we have no corner. Well, by the time we hit the free agent market, because we weren't able to get the corner that we wanted. So, yeah, I mean,
you can't really, because you can't tell me like a guy like Stephon Gilmore isn't going to have a job next year. You know what I mean? And
he'll be a 1-year contract for like $5 million, $5.5 million, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But he played pretty well in Dallas. I mean, he's 33, I believe, or 32, which is rare to see a corner at that age be productive, but he was. I mean, he was ultimately a pretty good. I mean, he slowed AJ Brown down, and AJ Brown was a top 5 receiver last year. So I'm very, very impressed with that. I mean, you still got guys out there, man. But yeah, I mean, for me, all I'm watching, and I was actually going to say the same thing. I do want to dig a little bit more into, like, we know all about the guys in the first round. We hear everybody talk about them. What I would give everybody a little bit of motivation to do is really start looking into these 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round projected guys, because a lot of those guys end up being the ones that end up making the most impact, which for whatever reason it seems to be that way. I mean, look
especially wide receiver wise.
Yeah, I mean, like look at Puka Nacua. He was a 4th, 5th round draft pick last year. So, I mean, you're always going to have those guys that slip. So, like, I always tell people, like, do your due diligence, man. Like, look into the conference they're in, take into account the competition they play against or whatever it is, because that usually has a big impact as well. If you're coming from some nobody school, it's okay. Well, maybe this is a little bit of a risky pick because we have no idea what he's going to do against D1 or professional level corners, in the NFL, because he played a bunch of, against teams that had 0 drafted players in the NFL draft.
Right.
You got to take some of that into consideration whenever you're looking at the stock. So, but yeah, dig into those draft picks, man, and always keep an eye on those free agents, because once the draft is closed, like once you hear that final bell, the next 3-4 days is going to be like everybody's making phone calls again, trying to get those guys. So maybe your team hasn't landed the guy in free agency that you want just yet. That is likely to change. It might not be until April, but it is going to happen. Mark my words, you're going to start seeing those older guys get those vet deals that teams are trying to avoid for now if they can, but everybody misses in the draft. You might have a phenomenal draft, and your GM will still say, damn, like behind the scenes, he's saying, damn, I missed a guy. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I'm looking at is just, trying to prepare myself for the draft, figure out where my team is going to be at and where I want them to be at, which usually very, very different places.
Right. Hey, I guess Robbie didn't have an argument for you about the Eagles.
Yeah, I was waiting. He was giving me a lot of rah-rah. I guess he just hated my list so much he left. I mean, that's a shame. I love some critiques, man. My mic actually snapped off. But yeah. So feel free, guys, to comment even after the show is done being live. I'm always reading any comments that come in after the show is over, because I think there's always been a pretty good couple that come in that are usually pretty entertaining. It's always easier to criticize us when we're not live, because I can't roast you in front of everybody. But yeah, man, that's all I had for the show this week. Next week, we will have a guest come on the show. We are hoping to have a commercial for you guys as well for Builder Bros. A little bit more information on the registration and the giveaway for the new roof. And I am also working on potentially a new sponsor heading into next week. So we might have another sponsor coming onto the show as well.
Look at us go, dude.
Oh, dude, it's
One
fun, man.
sponsor at a time, dude. We're going places.
I mean, listen, it's only been 12 episodes, so 3 months total of doing the show, and we're already almost 100 followers in, and we bought 0 of them. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, overall, people are like, dude, if you buy like 150 viewers, it'll even speed up how fast people find you, and that may be true. I just feel so dirty when you're new to just buy more than half.
We like real people.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't
Like
need
you
bots.
guys.
I don't
Yeah.
need I don't want my views to say 75 views and have 0 comments coming in and everybody
Right.
being like, that's really strange. So
Yeah.
everybody's watching, but nobody's talking. Interesting setup you got going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, and the more giveaways
They
we
know
do,
their place.
but the more giveaways we do, the more interest that we bring in, the more followers that we have, the more shows that we'll probably even do. I mean, I have no problem going live for a half hour and BSing with some people. But, you know, all I need you guys to do, if you can, like, comment, share, subscribe. You know, NFL Elite Banner is the actual page on Facebook. Go like that page. Don't just watch from my personal Facebook. I no longer open my phone to even look at those comments. So if I do not answer any of your comments, they do not show up here unless you are on the actual show. If you're actually on the page watching the show from there. Otherwise, it does not show me. I do not have time to have everything open to watch comments. Just don't have it. So yeah, follow the page, guys. Share it around if you can. The more viewers we get, the more giveaways we have, the more sponsorships we have, so the more money we have to put back into the show. It's all scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. But that being said, any last shout outs here?
Oh no, I just hope everybody has a very happy Easter.
Holy crap, that's this weekend.
Yeah, that's this weekend. Yes.
I'm dying next tomorrow.
Don't eat all your candy in one sitting.
Yeah. It's about Halloween candy in my closet.
Dude, ours doesn't last for more than 2 hours.
Well, you got 5 kids, dude. I mean, like, I used to eat a whole bag by myself when I was like.
Well, I mean, and I have a bit of a sweet tooth myself, so I help them out with it. So
I don't.
But no, everybody have a happy Easter. Stay safe out there. Prayers to Baltimore, by the way, with the bridge collapse.
Crazy.
But
yeah,
see you all next week.
Yeah, guys. So with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in to the NFL Elite Banner. I know we are not on our normal time, but we will be back next Thursday.